Hey everyone, welcome to another Patreon topic video. This one was suggested by Dingo, and I think it's a really cool topic that is definitely worth talking about in more detail. And so the topic today is hard mode only. Is it worthwhile only to play shmups in their hardest difficulties? Are lower difficulty modes worth your time? Or are they just for scrubs, basically? And I think this is actually a really important topic to talk about because there's definitely a attitude among players, especially people who start getting into the genre, or maybe just depending on who you are, where the only real worthwhile way to play a shmup is to play it in hard mode, to play it in the highest difficulty. That actually can sometimes be a disservice not only to the player, but a little bit to the game. So the game that absolutely comes to mind right now, because it perfectly applies to this concept, is Danmaku Unlimited 3. So I've talked to many people about this game over the years because it's one of my favorite shmups. I play it probably more than most people. And so whenever I'm suggesting the game to maybe experienced players or people picking up the game for the first time, I say, hey, you should check out Spirit Hard Mode or Spirit True Mode. I think those are the best, most fun modes of the game. And almost every time I tell people this, whether they are the more established players or even new players coming in, most people don't like the idea of playing Spirit Hard or Spirit True. And for a long time I couldn't figure out why. I was wondering, why don't these people like this mode? Why can't I get people to play this mode or to play it that much? Why are they all turning to Gray's Hard or Gray's True mode? And I figured out why. It's because when you open the game and it has the modes, it has Spirit mode and Gray's mode. And notice what I like about this is that it's not labeled, scrub mode, hard mode, because M2, I still think they shouldn't label super easy mode as super easy. It should be just a, easy mode. I think super easy might be a little too demeaning for some players. I know that's not what they're going for, because I think in Japan, playing in easy mode isn't as much of a taboo as it is among Western players. So they're like, hey, it's super easy. And Japanese players say, oh, I'm not good. That's perfect. But Western players, we don't like to be told we're not good. So super easy mode, I think, is a little bit unappealing. But anyway, so when you open up Dan 3 and it has the different modes and it says Spirit mode and Gray's mode, there's this big old writing on top of Spirit mode that says for beginners, and then Gray's mode is. So when you look at the game for the first time, it's telling you Spirit mode is for beginners. Spirit mode is the scrub baby mode, like in the Psycho games, monkey baby mode. And Gray's mode is the true mode of the game. The thing is though, is when you hit the menu from for beginners, it's actually referring to easy mode of Spirit mode, because the game has easy, normal, hard, true in Spirit mode. And then in Gray's mode, it just has hard and true. And the difference is how the bullets cancel when they die in Spirit mode. However, I would not say that true Spirit mode is by any means easy. That shit is not easy. It is definitely more difficult than Black Label 1-All, DOJ Black Label 1-All. And definitely more difficult than DFK or Resurrection, Dodonpachi Resurrection, or DFK normal mode. God, True Spirit is no joke. That's a hard mode. But because it had that label earlier, no one wants to play it. And so this is what I'm talking about, is I think that there is a sort of feeling that playing shmups in the easier difficulty modes is not cool. And so most people want to avoid doing that. However, let's say, again talking about Dan 3, because I went through and got the high scores on the forum for each of these modes, just because I felt like it. And it was actually an interesting experience, because I feel like I'm a pretty competent player at the game at this point. And so you would think going for high scores in easy mode, the actual easy mode, would be just a walk in the park, and that going for high scores in the normal mode would be harder. But it turned out that the ironic thing about easy mode is that it's easy for survival, but chaining in that mode is actually difficult because there's no enemies. Like, they cut out so many enemies and bullets that it kind of becomes Donanpachi like, where you have to very carefully time your kills to get your chains. And then the thing is yes, the boss patterns are easier for survival, but because they're so much easier, now you're having to look at, okay, well, I should milk these patterns now. So it introduces all this boss milking that you don't do in true mode because there's no real point. But in easy mode, that milking now becomes a viable option. It's like, okay, I should milk all these bosses now. And so then you're interacting the game in a new way. And so I think that's something more players need to consider, that just because the base difficulty of the mode is easier, that doesn't mean that there isn't more in-depth gameplay that you could look into and have fun with. For instance, let's think about like Touhou normal, or because cave games don't necessarily have normal, hard modes. They're just base difficulty all the way through. But with Touhou or with some indie shmups I've seen where they have normal modes and then hard modes, sometimes what I think is a lot of fun is actually to play in normal mode. But now that you have a really firm grasp on survival, now you can start really focusing in on the scoring and actually starting to do some meta strategies that you wouldn't do in hard mode normally because you're just trying to live. So I think players who are new to shmups, who feel uncomfortable with the idea of playing in easy mode because it's kind of like, oh, I should be playing the real game. I think that there are merits to playing those easier difficulties. Like in Crimson Clover, I know KZ got a trillion score in easy mode of Crimson Clover back when Game Boy Guru was doing it for his shmup club. And so I saw that and I was like, oh, well, I'm this Donanpachi player. I've been playing a ton of cave games lately. I'll just destroy KZ's score. I'll come in and just wipe his score out with a huge, massive score, right? How hard could it be? It's novice mode. But what I didn't realize is that KZ's really good at kind of like optimizing scoring, and he's really focused in on that sort of thing. And so even though I could survive easy mode very comfortably, I could not match his trillion score in novice mode because I wasn't as good about the knowledge of the scoring system and the scoring mechanics, and I wasn't milking everything that could be milked. And so that's something to consider too, is if you want to start to familiarize yourself with a shmup and it has multiple difficulty options, I think it might be a good idea to play in the hard mode, play in the difficult modes, but then also from time to time play in the easier difficulties and start to just kind of explore the scoring system more comfortably, because now there's not that absolute focus on survival. Now you can focus on milking and stuff like that. And so with, again, Spirit True mode in Dan 3, I feel like that mode is legitimately more fun than the Graze modes. Just the way the level design works and the way the cancels work. And it basically becomes like playing Donanpachi, where if you drop your chain, you drop your, or you get hit, you lose all your score. So it becomes like you need to no miss, no bomb, full chain the entire game. And the game will definitely reward you for doing that, which is a different challenge than in Gray's hard mode. Where, Gray's hard mode, it's harder to survive, but the scoring is more lenient because it's not that you can't capitalize on the scoring system as well as you can. So that's something to keep in mind, is that survival difficulty isn't the only thing that makes shmups hard. Sometimes getting a high score on a lower difficulty mode can be harder because they're more optimized, and so now you have to fully milk out every point and strategy that you wouldn't have to do if you're just trying to survive in the harder difficulties. And so I guess I could talk a little bit about my advice on when I think you should start playing in higher difficulty modes and how to choose the correct difficulty mode for yourself. Because I know everyone, especially if you're new to shmups, I know you want to just hop in and start playing, the highest difficulty modes or the hardest shmups, because you want to learn and get better faster. And that is an option. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm also saying maybe you should also supplement that with easier shmups. For instance, so like I said, a lot of cave games, you just play the arcade difficulty, right? There's not a lot of wiggle room there. And I wouldn't mess with the dip switches and stuff. I know you can do that in Ketsui and stuff. So maybe if you want to like play Ketsui with, you can actually go in and drop the dip switch down to easy if you want to learn Ketsui a little easier. Some shmups that works, some shmups it doesn't. But anyway, let's say you don't want to do that though. So when I was playing Dononpachi and DOJ, and I was just getting absolutely whipped by those games, on the side I was also playing easier shmups like Axelay and Dan 3 and stuff to kind of help focus my skills in not such a frustrating environment. So I think that's a good thing to keep in mind too, is if you're new to shmups and you feel uncomfortable with the idea of playing in easy modes and novice modes because you feel like people don't take them seriously, that's just a fact, unfortunately. Even if KZ got a world record novice score, I don't know how much attention he would get just because people don't take those modes that seriously. So there is that. But as your own development as a player, I think they are a very healthy thing to look into. And there's definitely, in my opinion, nothing wrong with playing that way and learning the games. More time in the games is a good thing. You just don't want to not push yourself in the long term, right? So if you're only playing easy modes and you refuse to ever try and push yourself, that's obviously going to get in the way. But if you're just coming in and you're just starting out, don't get discouraged by people saying, oh, you're not playing the real game and stuff like that, because people are going to be that way anyway. And I've definitely found that my skills, it worked really well for me to kind of build. Same thing with scoring and survival, right? That's another topic for another day, but basically I started off playing for survival, and then as I builded those survival skills, I graduated up to score. And I know a lot of people want you to just come in and start playing for score right away. I think that might have worked for some people, but for me, the gradual build up from survival, getting better at survival, getting confident in survival, okay, now I'll score. I think that's a very healthy progression and way to see the genre. So thanks so much to Dingo for suggesting this topic. And let me shout out my other $5 Patreons. Dingo himself, the man who suggested this video, Kiwi, Young Money Swee, Psych, Garen Tungate, Himmel, Jake Ryan, Joe Angelo, Kay, Maz, Nathaniel Davis, and Plasmo. Thanks for supporting. See ya.